Pink Poodle Crafts, join the Poodle Pack. It's time to get creative and make you laugh. Make your own art today. Pink Poodle Crafts is the way.
What a good boy. Hello, Poodle friends. How are you guys doing today? Hopefully well. Welcome to my channel, and I hope you'll hang out for a little while. I want to show you something pretty cool that I came across by accident. You guys know that, well, most of you know, that I like to experiment and play around and make my own stuff. And a while back, most of you know that I made DIY Oxide inks that work exactly like the Tim Holtz oxides. Now, whether or not I have the exact formula that they have, I'm sure it's not, but it's definitely a very close match because I'm able to get the exact same, you know, results with the oxidation and the whole 9 yards with my sprays. And I will put a link to that video in the description. It should be the very first link in the description will be to my DIY Oxide homemade Oxide ink sprays, not the stamping ink. Anyway, to that video. But yesterday I had just gotten up, and I was like, you know, half asleep almost, but you know, not really, but I was kind of like, I was still feeling kind of groggy, but my pills had kicked in and everything, and I had coffee. I just was feeling blah. But I was in the process of cleaning off my desk, and I had been talking about cleaning off my desk forever because, like, I have all these bins and everything with these little drawers in it and stuff, you know, all like behind my desk, a whole wall of it. And I wanted to organize it, so I had started organizing it last night, and then, or the night before last, I mean. Sorry, I'm confused. My days are all running together. I started organizing it the day before yesterday, and when I woke up yesterday, I still needed to put everything back, kind of, because I pulled everything out, and so it was like I had a lot of stuff on my desk, and I had like very little room right here cleared off on my desk. But I decided for some reason I got like a wild hair up my butt, and I was like, oh, you know what color I don't have for my DIY oxides was a lime green. And I was like, I want to make a lime green. I have like a green, or like I think I have like a turquoisey green, but I didn't have a lime green. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I can make a lime green. I had very little white pigment powder, which is one of the things I use a lot of, left. And so I was like, well, I'll use it and I'll make a lime green. Typically, the recipe is water-soluble stuff. So I use like gum arabic, which is what you use to make, which I put it away. But gum arabic is something that you use to make watercolors, and that's what makes it water-soluble. So typically, I would mix some liquid gum arabic into the bottle or into the container that I'm mixing the stuff in, and I would mix in a little bit of water, and then I'd mix in my different, like, I have liquid watercolors I use for that, so I would mix my liquid watercolors in, and then I would start putting my pigment powder in. Stuff like that. Well, when it came time to put either the gum arabic or the water, I don't know what I did, but I grabbed the wrong thing, and I never put the gum arabic in, and instead I mixed in some liquid varnish because it was sitting on my table because I was cleaning out my stuff. So I had very little room to begin with, and I had a bunch of stuff on my table, and this was on my table, this bottle of liquid varnish, which was very expensive, but I didn't buy it. I got it at the Creative Reuse, and I'm pretty much almost out of it. But it's a, you know, a fairly liquidy, you know, gloss varnishy stuff, and it's like the consistency of like, I don't even know. It's like obviously not like water, but like a thickened milk, even thicker than regular like vitamin D milk. It's definitely thicker. I don't know, but it's, you know, like a thick, you know, milk, I guess. but it's not like super thick. But anyway, so I grabbed this for some reason. I think maybe I thought it was my gum arabic. I don't even know. And I put a bunch in, and I went about my, you know, making of my spray. And I realized when I sprayed it, I was like, huh, that's acting weird. And it was acting very weird and different. And then I realized, oh, crap. I was like, I mixed the wrong thing in, and my gum arabic was like, you know, 3 feet that way, and I never even grabbed it. So here I am mixing varnish instead of gum arabic, which, you know, if you don't know the difference, gum arabic makes things water soluble, which means if I, you know, put water on it, it's going to reactivate. Whereas this is going to seal it, so it's not going to reactivate. So I was like, oh, crap. But in my playing with that color, when I was trying to figure out what was going on, I discovered something, and it made me tinker a little bit more with it. So I had discovered that because I was putting varnish, and it wasn't being, all of a sudden wasn't water soluble, it was giving me really vibrant color, as you can see. Kind of like when you do the oxides, right? So I'll show you an example of, and I'll use like just the regular Tim Holtz ones. So if you use the oxides and you spray a tag, or, you know, like you put some spray on something, I'm just going to put like 3 different colors for the hell of it. This stuff dries a lot quicker too, because it's so it's going to dry pretty quickly. Yeah, it's not going to do, you know, you don't have much time to work with it because it pretty much starts to dry pretty immediately. But I'm letting it dry a little bit. Just trying to keep things cleaned up because it's going to get messy in here in a little bit. So, you know, it's starting to dry, and, you know, whether it's, I'll dry it completely for this because I'm trying to give you an idea, just in case you're somebody who don't know a lot about oxides and stuff and how they work, to kind of help give you an idea. Let me hit this with the heat gun a minute. Okay, so that's dry. You don't see anything shiny on there. It's dry. And you take water, and most of you know this. If also, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button. I do all kinds of fun stuff on here. So I'm trying to get it wet. And it might be because I dried it too much. But you'll see. You see it's coming up, right? And it'll leave watermarks and all that. So you can see that it's got watermarks on it and the whole 9 yards because the water stained it. And the difference between what I did, you know, obviously with because there's varnish in what I made, it wasn't giving me, it wasn't letting me do that initially. But I did figure something out. And also the oxides will kind of get, which these didn't really do what I was also wanted them to do, because I dried them too much before I did what I wanted to do. Or like, all right, let's do it this way for a minute. For example, you know, you do the method where you do this and you dip it, right? And you get it all over your thing. And what happens when you add water to it, which I didn't do the first time, I added it well after it was dry, but what happens is when you add water, it oxidizes, or what really is happening is the white pigment that's in the bottle is rising kind of to the surface. And that's what's giving it that oxidation, which you could see here. You see that white kind of hazy and that kind of hazes out the color a bit. And a lot of times there are a lot of colors in the oxides that, regardless of what color it is, sometimes the hazing can look all the same and kind of haze out your color. I'm sure if you've ever worked with oxides, you know what I mean. You know, you'll be putting a whole bunch of cool colors on, and then you'll add a little water, and bam, all of a sudden you've got like this haze, and you can't even tell what color it was. That happens sometimes with certain oxide colors, with a lot of oxide colors actually, you know, and it's kind of like, it's almost like a downfall to the oxides in a sense, even though, don't get me wrong, let me tell you, oxides are like my favorite sprays because they are fun to play with, and once you get over the learning curve of what you can and can't do with them, they're amazing, and you can do a lot of fun stuff with them. But like I said, some people don't like them, and I've heard people say that because of that hazing sometimes you get on them, you know, that white oxidizing effect, that they don't like it because it ends up covering up your color. And you got to know which ones will do that, and you got to kind of know how to play with them and learn how to play with them right to get like some cool things with them. But what I discovered anyway, going back to what I made yesterday, was I got all the vibrancy with no hazing, with that none of that hazing. And what was cool was this particular tag here has about 20 layers of like spray on it. Like, and every one of the layers I put on looked amazing, looked almost better than the last. So I was able to keep building and keep building and keep building and keep building. I did get a couple specks of black on there that I didn't intend to, right there and there and there. But that was because I was doing something else. I think I was doing this or something else. I'll show you that in a minute. But this was the effects I was getting with what I made. And this is layering on top of layering. I mean, I'm surprised this thing isn't like an inch thick because of how much I put on. And was just playing and playing and playing. I wanted to see how far I can push one thing until like I was trying to make mud. I was trying to do something to aggravate it where it wasn't going to look good. And I could not make it look bad. Whereas with oxides, I can very easily make it look bad. You know, over time, if you layer too much, it doesn't have the same effect. Whereas this, if you layer... And I wasn't doing full sheet layers. After a while, I was kind of like, I started with spraying the whole thing. And then after a while, I was spraying little sections. And I was like doing all kinds of things. And I'll show you how to do all that because it's interesting. But I just wanted to give you a little backstory on how I got here. And, you know, also for the people that don't really know a lot about oxides, because I didn't want this to kind of confuse them when I start comparing them. But as you can see, the color vibrancy on these is absolutely amazing. And it's just, they're just so cool to look at. I mean, they look like they're the oxides almost, right? Except there's no oxidation. You have that same spotting that you get from spraying. And look at that. It's just a very different monster from the oxides. And you're probably thinking, well, how do you get that spotting if these aren't water soluble? Well, that's where I'm going to get into that in a minute. So like, for instance, this is the oxides. Again, this is a homemade oxide because I added a shimmer to the purple, but this is one of the oxides here. And the vibrancy difference is pretty, you know, you get a lot more color depth. Even though this is not a very good example because there's like 2 colors on here. So it's probably not the best example, but I don't have another one right near me that I can show you. I don't think. Let me look really quick here and see if I have another oxide specifically. I'm looking. I have this little box that has stuff in it. Let's see. But here's a for instance. Okay, so you see this, how it looks like it has a haze over it? Well, that's because of me wetting it, and this is oxides, and it gave that kind of haze, so you lost the vibrancy. You see what I mean? Like the orange in the middle is not that orange. So it's one of those things you have to experiment with. here's some that I don't think I put water on these at all. So these are a little bit more vibrant. But I don't have one that's like, here's another one that hazed over a bit. You can see that obviously it was activated with some water, so it was really hazy. So, which is fun. I mean, that's the whole point of oxides, is that's their spiel, you know, that's their thing, is that they, you know, they oxidize, you know, and that's the cool thing about them, and that's why I love them. So, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, these are necessarily better than oxides, but there are a lot of things about this that to me is better. And then there are things about the oxides that are, you know, have their own, they each have their own, like, thing. You know what I mean? Like, and I've never used them together. I've not tried that. Who knows? I might in the future, but. So, what I like about these is, okay, so the differences between my sprays that I made up by accident and oxides are, these are permanent once they're dry. And you can layer them like literally endlessly. You can put other things on top of them without worrying about spreading the ink, which is another thing that you can't do with oxides. So if I were to take this tag, which was done with oxides, and decide that I want to, you know, put something else on it or paint something or do something on this, I have to really take into consideration the fact that whatever I do is going to reactivate this ink. And like if I flick white pigment or white paint on here, the white paint is going to kind of turn the color that this card is, because the white paint is going to activate the ink. And please don't mind my nails, they're really not dirty, it's just stained really bad from doing all this stuff. Like, my hands were beat up. I have a picture of it in the group, that in our Facebook group, that shows how bad my hands were, and I couldn't get it out from under my nails because it's like stained. But in another day it'll be gone, so I don't really care. But anyway, so white paint typically, you know, if you splatter it on oxides, it a lot of times will disappear. It's very hard to get it to be vibrant against an oxide background. So there's certain downfalls in that way, whereas oxides will reactivate if you do certain things to it, whereas these will not. So you could do whatever you want with them as long as they're dry, because, like, for instance, you know, like, the water is beating up on it, like, it, because it's, you know, basically an acrylic paint, and it's not reactivating. What you see on here is just, you know, stuff, but it's not reactivating. It didn't smear it. It didn't mess it up. It's not going to. Another couple of tags I made, or things I made, I did a galaxy, and see how, see the stars are nice and vibrant white, and I did that with a spray that I made, a white spray that I made. So it, you know, I already had a white kind of oxide spray that I made. And so I made a white spray like this so that it was more of a permanent spray, so that it gave nice, vibrant white spots. And I put varnish on top of it, by the way. That's why it's shiny. So I decided to varnish it because, see, now with the oxides, if I go to varnish them with a brush, I'm going to get a lot of pickup of the ink. Whereas with this, you don't. You can varnish it, you can paint on it, you can do whatever you want. You're not going to disturb the actual ink. Here's another one that I did on glossy. I was just playing with this one. I did it on glossy cardstock, and then I took that my DIY distress micro glaze that I made, and I put it in this embossing powder, holographic embossing powder bottle. But this is my DIY embossing, or DIY distress glaze. I don't know. I always say that wrong. Let me get a drink here. My mouth gets so dry. But anyway, and so I did it like you would with the, we do that with the oxides. You would spray it on the glossy cardstock, and then when it's dry, you can go over it, and that'll take the haze off. So if you do use oxides, you can take the haze off by using the Distress Micro Glaze, which is just alcohol and Vaseline. I also have a DIY for that. If I can remember, I will put a link underneath of the link to the Oxide DIYs in the description. So that'll take like the haze off, so then you'll get like more vibrancy. Well, I just wanted to see what it would do if I did it on here. So, but that's not all I did on here. So I kind of covered it up a bit after that, because I did the micro glaze, I buffed it. I was like, okay, yeah, it looks, some of the colors looked a bit more vibrant, but it didn't change tremendously, but it did look more vibrant and a little bit shinier. But again, we're dealing with more of an acrylic base kind of thing here. So it was going to cover it a little differently than the oxides. So I did that, and then I took varnish, and I don't know why I stupidly wasn't thinking, and I brushed a bunch of varnish over top of this, I buffed this on here, and it was of course going to be waterproof at that point, because that stuff makes it like a resist. And I stupidly brushed a whole bunch of varnish on here, and it was beating up, and I said, ooh, I forgot about that. And so I just said, you know what, screw it, I'll leave it sit, and I let it dry, beat it up. And when it beat it up, it gave me a totally different thing, because then I took some of the spray that I made and went back and sprayed it with this teal and this green, because underneath it was orange and pink and red. And then I took, I did the micro glaze, and then I buffed it, and then I took the varnish and went over it and realized it was beating up and let it dry. Once the varnish was dried, it dried, beat it up. So then I took the sprays over top of it again in the green and the blue, and when I, did what I do, which I'll show you, where I pick up some of the color, it still picked it up, and it left like the little marks where it kind of beat it up, which was kind of cool. So, I mean, you can still see the varnish underneath. It's interesting. Gave it just an interesting, I don't know, it's just me playing around. I also did, through a stencil, embossing powder, clear. Well, first I put down a whole bunch of color, pinks and purples back there, as you can see in the background. I did the pinks and purples, and then I dried it, and then I put the embossing powder through a stencil and embossed it with the clear, and then I sprayed it with the black spray that I made. And let it dry. Now, I was hoping that it would be a bit easier to get it off of the embossing powder, but again, this is acrylic base, so it dried like acrylic paint, so I had to do a little more work to get it off of each of these little spots, so it wasn't as good of a thing. I thought it would wipe off a little easier. Nah, not really, but it was still cool if you take the time to go through and like pretty much scrape the paint off of each one of those little spots, which is pretty much what I had to do, because I had to wait for everything to dry in order to take a baby wipe and try to wipe it. And well, the baby wipe was not really cutting it, so I almost pretty much had to use my nail to kind of scrape through the baby wipe to get the paint off. But again, that was just my, my way of playing to figure all this out. This is one that I did, and then I took a varnish and went over it after I was done. This is just layered, a whole bunch of layered color. Again, like this other one, I layered and layered and layered and layered. And then I took varnish over top of it so you can see the difference. And plus this one has a little bit lighter colors than this one. I used a little bit lighter colors than this one and more white on this one. So the reason this one is more darker than this one isn't because of the varnish or anything like that. It's just because of the colors I used. So I just got interesting results is my point. So that's what I'm dealing with here. That's what we're dealing with. And I want to show you how to make one. Now I already made, which I should have saved one to make one of the other colors, but I already made 9 or 12 colors of my own. The first one I made, of course, was the, which one is it? It's this one. And of course it still has pigment on the bottom. I put balls in here and everything. And of course it needs to be shaken really well. None of these are. The balls aren't even, there we go. I have to bang it on the table sometimes. You hear the ball in there now. So that's the lime green that I made first. And this has got paint all over it, but who cares? So this is the first color I made. It's lime green. I don't know which the second and third one was. I have no idea really, but this is another color I made. This is I think this is the teal. Is this the teal? No, this is the like the turquoisey kind of color. On camera it might not look it. It's like a kind of a muted turquoisey color, but it's pretty. So that's my turquoisey color. And then I've got like a dark teal. And I'll go down, I'll give you a rundown of a basic supply list after I show you the colors I have. So there's a dark teal. I've got a yellow. I've got a yellow. I've got two different oranges. I've got a light orange and a dark orange because I was trying to make an orange and it was coming out a little different than I wanted, but it was still a good orange. It was coming out a little too light and I had to play around a little bit, but I was like, okay, I'll just make a light orange and then try to make another one that's darker. And I ended up being successful making the darker one eventually. So I've got this orange and this darker. You got to mix them to really see the color because it starts to settle. So a light orange and a dark orange. Of course, I've got a pink. A nice vibrant pink. I've got a red. It's a very dark, really nice dark red. I've got a standard blue. I've got a purple, which we're going to make another purple today. I want to go for a little bit more of a darker purple. This is a pretty decent purple. It's kind of like, I would say, yeah, it's kind of like, no, I mean, it's not exactly like either of these really, because this one's more of a red purple, and this one's lighter than mine, and a little bit different. So it's a little different than the Oxide purple. I've got my white, which I didn't make a lot of because I ran out of white pigment. And so I had to do what I had to do, and I could only make like a little bit more than half a bottle. And then I've got a black. So a pretty good, you know, mix of colors I made, so that I would have a good, I just sat and was going to town because once I made the first color, it was like, I had to make another color to see what I could do with two colors, you know what I mean? Because the first color was being kind of cool, but it was like if I didn't have another color to kind of figure it out and see what would happen. So that's when I made either this one or this one, I can't remember. And then I made like another teal, and then I started making pink, and then and it just snowballed. And for hours I was sitting there, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm supposed to be cleaning off my desk, and here I am making all these colors of these sprays. It was insane. So basically what you need to make these, which you may or may not have, and if you already were interested in making the DIY oxides, then this is a very easy transition for you. You know what I mean? To make these inks or paint sprays or whatever you want to call them. Obviously you need a cup. And you use a little bit of water, not much. I fill the water up to not even this first line here. I fill it like right below, and that's all the water I use. Obviously, you need a liquid varnish. I don't think it matters whether it's a matte varnish or a gloss. This just happens to be gloss, but it still didn't make anything with all the pigment powder you put in. It didn't really make anything glossy. So, and there's a little bit of varnish in this. That's why you're seeing a little bit, because I had taken some varnish and was playing, I think, at one point. But if you like look at this one, it's not shiny. So I don't think it matters whether it's gloss. I might even have put this stuff in, which is another gloss varnish, this multi-surface Deco Art stuff. It doesn't matter. Matte, gloss. I think I was putting, actually, yeah, I was putting this stuff, which is like a satin varnish. I don't know. I was trying different varnishes and stuff. Any kind of liquidy varnish will work. You can probably take like, even like a matte medium, or, you know what I mean? Or an acrylic medium of some sort, even a thick thing, and mix it with the water and make sure that it dissolves all the way. And as long as you can dissolve it all the way, you can use it. So in other words, if you don't have liquid varnish, you might be able to use one of those thicker varnishes. And it's got to be a water-based, obviously, because it's got to be able to dissolve in the water. So it's got to be a water-based varnish, which is what this is. But you can try like putting some, like, you know, some sort of, you know, gloss varnish. You can even try just putting in some Elmer's glue. I mean, I haven't tried that, but, you know, it might work fine. Who knows? I don't know. I think, you know, it probably will. So you might get away with just using Elmer's glue. Actually, I'm pretty sure it would work just fine with Elmer's glue. I don't have it with me right this second, but I'm probably going to try that at some point too. Because it's a lot cheaper that way. So anyway, water, some sort of varnish or sealer or something, because that's going to be your binder, what they call a binder. That's going to hold all the color together, all the pigment powders. That's going to make it so that it is not water soluble once it's dry. So once it's dry, it will not run at that point, no matter how much liquid you put on it. So that's why that's important. Then you need, what's different about this and oxides as well is I use paint. I put some paint in. Obviously, the first time I did it with the lime green, I did not put paint in. But I think I went back and put some paint in after I realized, okay, this is going to be acrylic based anyway. It's not going to be water soluble, so I can, you know, help my color along by adding paint. So the rest of them, I don't know about this one. I think I added, yeah, I did. I added paint in this one. But the rest of them all have paint added in them. So you can add paint. If you don't have paint, which I think everybody does, just craft paint, just cheap craft paint. If you can, you know, and then you'll also, most importantly, the last two things are important. You need some sort of pigment powder. This is what this is. It is pigment powder. Okay, this is what's going to give you that, the difference between it kind of just being really, really dull or not vibrant, and, you know, having it so that you can layer it, because this will give it a lot of opaqueness and help it sit more, help the colors sit on top of each other. So that's why this is kind of important, because yeah, putting paint in helps the color, but you couldn't put enough paint in the bottle, in your mixture, to make it so that it was going to be, because paint has pigment in it. Okay. And this is pigment. So you couldn't put enough of this in where it's going to actually spray out of your bottle without clogging it to make it have enough of that pigment. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense. So you have to have the pigment powder to go along with it. This is to help you boost your color a little bit, to help you along so you don't have to use as much. But you really do need pigment powder, not mica powder. There's a difference, not mica powder. You can put mica powder in later, but mica powder does not give you color. Mica powder gives you shimmer. That's it. Sometimes it can give you a really, 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 really subtle color, but it's not going to give you that vibrant color. That you need just regular mica powder. It has no shimmer to it. It's just a matte powder. It has no shimmer. It just looks like, you know, just looks like powder. And the kind, you know, oops, This kind, like, it balls up a little bit, but the balls kind of easily break. As soon as you, like, touch them, they start to break. But it's a more, like, dense powder, I guess. You can go to earthpigments.com, which is where I get all mine. Obviously, this came from the Creative... not obviously, but this came from the Creative Reuse, so this wasn't from Earth Pigments. But the one from Earth Pigments are, like... You can get, like, a bunch of different colors from Earth Pigments. That's where most of my pigments come from. I need to order more white because you will also need white. You can, well, I mean, all right, so with the oxides, all the colors that I made of the oxides sprays, I used white pigment along with my various watercolors and yada yada because that gives it the best haze, right? So you don't need white oxide powder for this stuff, for my sprays, for these particular sprays. You could just use whatever color oxide you want, not oxide, whatever color pigment you want your spray to be. So you can use a coordinating thing. Now you can use white, but it's going to lighten any color you have. So you're going to lose a lot of depth of color, which is what happens with the oxides. But there's one more thing we're going to add to this that will help. Printer ink. Printer ink. And now, since we're not making oxides, we don't have to be, you know, conservative with the printer ink. We can add a ton of it to give a really big boost of color. And this is dye. So that's why I said there, you know, I think I said in one of the pictures that I posted in the group, they are still a dye and pigment mix. They just have a different binder. The oxides have a gum arabic or, you know, binder, which binds all the stuff together, but it makes it water soluble even after it's dried. So that's the difference. And these have this binder, liquid varnish. So that's the difference. Like the difference is in the binders that you use. So I have blue and magenta, which will make purple. So that'll help my purple. I have my purple powder and my purple paint. Plus I have this other violet, because I'm going to try to make a really dark purple, like a rich purple. This is another pigment. This is a cremer pigment that I had gotten. So I know that's a lot and to think about, but I'll say it again. Some sort of varnish or even probably Elmer's glue will be fine. Mod Podge. Use Mod Podge if you want to. That'll probably work fine. Gloss, matte, doesn't matter. You just need it as a binder. Please do not use hairspray because hairspray is not a stable binder, obviously, because hairspray washes out with water. So if you spray it, if you don't, like, it's going to react. Okay? That's why I always tell people when they say, oh, use hairspray. Don't use hairspray. Okay? It's not meant for longevity, and it's going to react to humidity. It's going to react to any water put on it. It's going to react because hairspray is meant to be washed out. You know, have you ever got your hair wet when you had hairspray on it? It gets all sticky. Yeah, you don't use hairspray. That's not a proper binder. You can use any liquid varnish or even Elmer's glue. I'm sure will work. I know Mod Podge will work because it's got varnish in it. So any one of those things as your binder. That is important because without the binder, none of this stuff would really stick together and you would spray it down and it would pretty much just like be a hot mess. So anytime you're making any kind of spray or paint or whatever, you know, or ink this or whatever, you need something to bind it. And whether you use gum arabic will make it a water soluble product, or you use a acrylic, which will make it a permanent. So you need your binder, you need your printer ink or your dye ink. Do not use the watercolors this time. Use the watercolors with the oxide, DIY oxides. You're going to use the printer ink alone with the pigments to make these, which I haven't really named these my little, I don't know what to call them. I don't know. And then you need your pigments, you know, one or whatever, however many. Mix a whole bunch together. Who cares? You know, I mean, obviously keep them in the color you're trying to get, but, you know, until you get, you know, figure it out. And then you want some paint. Now, this doesn't have to be a thing, but obviously we all have it, so you might as well help boost your, you know, boost your color and get you along so you don't have to use as much pigment. It'll help that. And these are pretty much the same color. So that's basically what you need, and a little bit of water. So water, your binder, printer ink, or some sort of permanent ink. You might try different things like RIT dyes maybe, or I don't know. You can figure that out. Anything that's permanent and not water soluble. In other words, when you put it down on paper, it shouldn't move once it's dry with water. So binder, water, printer ink, pigment powder, paint. So that's 5 things. Water, binder, printer ink, pigment powder, paint. A lot of P's. Pigment, printer ink, paint. You know what I'm saying? So that's what you need. Now, every time I make stuff, people go, well, you know, how do I know how much to mix for each color? That is not something I can tell you. Please do not put in the comments, well, I don't know how to mix. I don't know how to mix every color. You should put all the recipes down. I didn't follow a recipe, and to write down my recipe would make me insane because I play. I sit and I play. I don't have time to sit down and figure out how much of everything I just put in. I don't care that much. That's why. I can care less if I make this exact color exactly the same the next time I fill this bottle. I don't care if it's off a little bit. I know in my head the basics of what paint and what pigments I used, and printer ink, but I have no idea the ratio. I'll just wing it. And that's how I look at it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to have everything look exactly the same. I'll wing it just like I did to make them. And that's what you need to do too. You just need to play. This is playtime. And don't be afraid to play. Sit down, grab a stupid cup, and just start mixing stuff together and see what you get. I mean, that's all I can tell you to do, because every color is going to have a different amount of whatever, or different, and you might not like this exact color or that color or whatever. You might want to play and make your own colors. If you want to, start off and use like teeny tiny cups like this, which would be a lot harder to do, but you could do it if you just use tiny little amounts and mix little bits and play that way if you're really afraid of using up too much of your stuff. But I'll tell you right now, last night when I was making all of these sprays, there's not one color that I couldn't utilize somehow. So even if I mix something and I didn't really like it, I could fix it. And that's why it's really important that people get a color wheel, so you can kind of understand a little bit about color, even if you have to watch a video online about how to mix color. That will help you so much in learning the basics of what to and not to mix, how to make colors more vibrant, how to, you can find so much, like a tremendous amount of information about color mixing. Do a little research, sit down, take an hour and look up videos about mixing color. It is important that you do that, because if you're going to make things like this, or even any kind of sprays, it doesn't have to be these, it's important you know how to mix color, because otherwise you're going to end up pissing yourself off as you mix things together and end up with mud. I learned something, recently myself, because this is magenta. And I thought to myself, well, how do I make magenta red? Because in a printer, the only colors you have is magenta, cyan, and yellow. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, how do you get red out of that? So I had to look that up. And I discovered that by adding a little bit of yellow to magenta, it makes it red. And I didn't know that. I thought it would make it orange, or like, some weird color. No idea until I figured that out. I had to go online and look it up. And that's what you do. You go online and you look it up and get a basic idea. You don't have to have the exact colors. Like if you go online, say, put in, if you want to get very specific and say, oh, how do I make teal? which is blue and green, by the way. Just different ratios will make different shades of it. You can make it where you get like a turquoise, or you can make it where you can get a teal. One has a little more green, the other one has a little more blue. That's all it is to it. It's nothing. You know what I mean? Lime green, yellow, and a light green. Pretty much, you know? If the green is too light and you're adding yellow to it and it's not quite limey enough, add a few drops of blue. You know what I mean? Like, if you know the basics, it's really helpful. It, like, shockingly is very helpful. So I say to anybody, if you're afraid of mixing color, just look some stuff up online. And even if you're really afraid, sit with your cheap paints and mix a few colors and learn how they all kind of respond to each other. You don't have to worry about the exact names of the colors. Oh, well, they said you have to use, you know, this specific type of blue and this specific type of red to make a specific purple. It ain't that complicated. We're not trying to get that complicated. We're just trying to make something that looks pretty. I wasn't set out to get this exact color. I was just setting out to get a purple. I was like, oh, cool, I got a purple, done. Like, I didn't worry about it. I wasn't trying to, like, go crazy. You know what I mean? And, like, just do what you can to make some basic colors to play with, and that's all you really need. So, we're going to make a darker purple, or attempt to make a darker purple. I don't know if it's going to work. If not, it doesn't. Whatever. Then we move on. You know? I don't know. We're going to try. So, I'm going to add water, like I said, right under, you know, that little line there usually is what I ended up starting with. So I have my water, and the first thing I add in is my varnish, which actually I'm going to try to use this stuff this time because I wanted to see if this will, and you're going to say, well, how much varnish do you add in? Oh, I just squirt it. See, now I need to make sure that's going, before I squirt any more in, it's going to actually, all right, yeah, it is, separate and not stay all stringy. And as long as you can, you know, it'll get milky looking. So I just squirt a buttload in, probably as much as there is water. I put in that much of the varnish. So I just sat here and squirted. There we go. Voila. 2 long squirts. That's all I can tell you. Just enough to make sure that you have, you know, at least equal amounts of water and varnish. That'll be fine, you know. So I started off with the liquids, besides this. You can, it doesn't matter, but I usually went from, you know, that to then the paints. So now I'm going to throw some paint in here. I'm going to mix my paint. I don't know which one's darker. I'm going for a dark purple, so let me see which one of these is darker. Okay, they're like exactly the same. All right, then. We'll just use this one. So again, with the paint, I didn't put as much as the varnish. I just sat here and squirted just a few squirts in of the paint and mixed it, and it'll turn a nice, you know, you'll see it'll turn like purple. You know, and you'll think, oh, okay, there's purple right there. But see, I want it darker than that, so I'm hoping to get that. But see, it's going to end up getting a little lighter when I add my pigment, because the pigment is a different color. And even if I can't get it a dark purple, if I can get a like redder purple than this, that would be cool too. I'm not that picky, you know. I just take what I can get out of it and be happy with that. So I've got some paint, I've got my varnish, got my water. I'm going to start throwing some pigment in there. Take a few good heaping spoonfuls of that. You know, just these little spoons. Start out with 2 or 3 of those. And then mix. And you got to mix this really well. And I might not even see a whole lot of color change. But it'll help in the long run. It's going to help with the sitting on top of the different colors. That's the whole point of that. And you don't need to put, like, I put 3 heaping of these tiny little spoons, not tablespoons or anything, but like, so I would say these are about a teaspoon maybe. So I put like 3 heaping teaspoons, and I'm talking for a 2-ounce bottle of spray. There's 3 heaping, and I'll probably put more in. And I've got this as well to put in. So I'll probably put a little bit more of this in, and then I'm going to move to maybe like 1 more. And then I'm going to move to the, I mean, I don't want to make it so thick that it's like insane. Like it's starting to thicken up quite a bit. But again, I still have this, and this is like water, and I can always add a little more water too. So don't get the, you know, if you're like, oh no, it's getting too thick, add water. Wait till you add your printer ink, which again, your printer ink, I will try to remember to put a link to that in my description. It's about under $20. You can get black, magenta, cyan, and yellow. And then, yeah, plus you can get the light cyan and the light magenta along with it. So I think there's like 6 altogether for under 20 bucks. Under 20 bucks, which is not bad. And that'll last you quite a bit. This one's almost full, but this one's almost empty. All right, so that's pretty mixed. I want to add some of this dioxazine purpley stuff because this is supposed to be a dark, this is like a real dark color, I think. Add like a spoonful. It looks green. Oh, you can't see, but it kind of looks green. But let's see what that does. Probably won't do anything. Nope, not really a lot. But already it's a totally different purple than that one. You see what I mean? So I'm not mad at it. It's a nice dark purple. Put a little more of that in. And I'm just doing this for color reasons mostly. That one I'm not putting in as much for the, you know, for the pigment effect. Oh, it's all stuck together. I'm gonna jam it here against the side. Sometimes you gotta rub it against the side with your spoon, you know, and kind of get it to break up. Because sometimes the pigments get clumps together before it. Oh, this is a nice purple though. It's nice and, see, it looks almost blue on camera, but it's not. It's very dark. Perfect. It's a little thick. I may have to go in and add a little varnish and water to thin it out. And if I make too much to go in my bottle, because this is about enough to fill my bottle already, I'll just put it in another container and save it as like a refill, you know. I did that with one of them. I got a little too much. I try not to go, you know, too much, but I was trying to make my really dark purple, which I did. It's very, very dark purple. On camera it looks funny, but... So now I'm going to add, actually, I'm going to start with the blue. I'm just going to add a couple squirts of that. And it's going to blue it up a little bit and make it a more blue purple. Ooh, that's pretty though. That is a really pretty purple. I wish it came across purple on camera, but holy crap, that's pretty. I might not have to add any pink to that. I might add just a little bit, but, or magenta, but that is a nice dark royal purple. But it's the dye is also important because, you know, which I can add, you know, I can add a lot of this and then add the pink to it because I want to have more dye in here because the dye helps give a nice dark coloring. So it's kind of important to have the dye. So you want to have, you know, a few, at least, you know, a couple tablespoons of dye, which will help thin it out. And I'm just throwing it in willy-nilly because obviously pink and blue make, or red and blue, which this is technically supposed to be like, you know, the primary red color of the printer ink. But, you know, magenta and blue make purple. So, you know, as long as, if you put too much blue in, then go back with a little pink or magenta. Or vice versa. This is perfect. This color is so perfect. I wish the camera would pick it up. It looks so blue on camera. It's so bizarre. But I love it. It's still a little bit thick. I'm going to add some more of, you know, I'm going to add this varnish because of the fact that this is a little bit thinner. Now I'm going to have a lot of extra in this one here for sure, because I need to add some water to this. It's a little slightly bit thick. Not by too much, but a little bit. So we're going to add a little water. And then that's better. But if you add water, like, you know, I added varnish, you got to make sure you add varnish as well. You don't want to add water without adding a little more of your binder. All right, let me put that in there. Clean that off. That is a nice purple. Close up everything because I made a good color. Now, you might notice that when you're mixing it in a cup, it's harder to break everything up. Once you get it in the bottle and you start shaking it, and especially if you have a couple little BBs to put on the bottom of it, which I do, and you can get these online. Just look up mixing balls is what they're called, and you just want the little ones. I usually put 2 in. You can put 1 if you want, but any little metal balls. And right before I pour it, I always mix it really good to make sure nothing has settled. So I'll mix it really good, and I have a funnel. I mix it really good, and then I pour it in. And of course, I have a ton extra, which is fine. Like I said, I'll put it in a container, or actually, I have another idea. So there's my purple, and it is dark. I love it. What I'll do is actually, I'll put it in another bottle, and maybe in a little while, I'll try to make a shimmer out of it. I'm not sure I can, but I can try. Because there's enough in here. Let me make sure it's mixed again to fill another bottle. Yeah, yep, all the way up. Let me just cut the stem on this. Oh, any balls? Give me my balls. So I'll save this one, set it aside, and that'll be the one I experiment with. And then I'm just going to toss this cup. There's no point in cleaning that. But I do try to clean my little spoons, even though they're just plastic spoons. They look like they're supposed to look like silverware, but they're just plastic spoons. It might look more purple if I bring it up here a little bit. Nope, it still looks blue. But it's very, very purple. Like, think of royal purple. Hello? Royal purple is what this is, definitely. Even though on camera it looks weird blue, it's not. So, okay, so we got a purple color. Now, I wanted to experiment with making an actual metallic. Because we're using paint, this is completely experimental. I have no idea if this would even work in a million years. I don't know. But I thought, why not try it? Right? I mean, why not? So, water. I mean, it can't hurt. Or not gold, I'm sorry, bronze, because I have several different types of like bronzy colors, plus like a rose gold and another one that's called Ruby Royal, which is I think like a rosy copper. I don't know. So we're just going to mix these together and see what the hell happens. So I'm going to mix in my liquid varnish, bunch of... Now, with this, the only printer ink that I can probably use is a little bit of yellow. So, I don't know how this is going to work. Oh, and I also have this, which is X Pigments. This is pigment and mica together. But it's still, if you just used it with water, it would be very, you'd have to use a lot of it to get it very opaque. More than you would regular pigment powder. And then I was thinking that I could use like a coppery colored pigment powder a little bit and see what happens. I don't know how this will all work out. But that's the fun of it, you know? That's the fun, is just to see what'll happen. I mean, what am I using? Some cheap paints? Ooh, you know, big deal. Throw some of that color in. Throw some of this color in. I mean, it's just paint and some varnish, or just use, like I said, just use Mod Podge or Elmer's glue if you know, and then you're really not have to use anything expensive, because the only reason I'm using $17 varnish is because I got it at the Creative Reuse. That's it. Not for any other reason. Just because, you know, that's what I had. And it was liquid and it worked well, and I probably shouldn't have used that and used something else, but because I pretty much used the whole bottle. Now for this, I would suggest using a gloss varnish with this one, or gloss Mod Podge, or whatever, gloss medium, whatever you want, but so that it can keep its metallic, you know what I mean? So I don't know how this is going to work, because see, now the pigment, which I think this is a pretty good match to get some pigment to it, because I don't want it to be, I want it to be opaque, which this I put a lot of paint in this one because of that reason. But I'm thinking that, you know, I have these brownish pigments over here that I've never really used, because I'm going to make like a cool brown color too for like grungy looks. But, oh, I don't need that. I can get a different spoon. But I thought I'd try it because I definitely want some pigments in here. So, because otherwise, you know, it might not be opaque enough, I guess. As long as we don't lose the metallic, which so far it's not. Put a spoonful of this one. These are all in that same kind of color family. A little more of this one. Alright, that should be good. And those. That's just to kind of give it that, you know, opacity that'll keep it maybe opaque. And then I'm going to add some of this too, which is these are, let me see. It doesn't say, but they definitely are a pigment mica mix. Most other things you see that are shimmer, like for instance, where are they? Here. Like the cosmic shimmers and all that, even though they look a color, if you mix them with water, they're not going to look a color. You know what I mean? Like, you're just going to see the shimmer. So, very few things have an actual pigment to them, along with the mica. A lot of times it's a pigment, but it's so little bit. Whereas these are a little bit better because they're more expensive. They're a little bit of a better quality. So, these have a pigment and a mica. So I'm going to throw a couple good spoonfuls of that in there. See what we get. I'm splashing everywhere, but I want to mix it pretty vigorously. I just want to help the... And obviously, you know, the only thing, you know, don't go running out and getting Pearl X powder just to do this, but not unless you're, you know, not until you've played with all this, you know, and done the other ones and stuff, because, you know, that should be good. I just want to make it very, very, very shimmery to keep its... And this, you know, could clog up my thing, but not much more than the pigments would. But the mica doesn't break down as much as the pigment powders do. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to buy anything, get yourself the printer ink and your pigment powders from earthpigments.com. earthpigments.com, exactly like I said, earth, like the earth we live on, and pigments.com. You can go there and get a whole set for like, get a set of basic colors, and then your white for like 20, 25 bucks, and then your printer ink will be about 20. So, I mean, yeah, is it a little bit of an investment? Yep, but isn't everything in the craft community or the craft hobby? But that'll make you like so many sprays. And then your bottles, of course, you know, I sell the bottles. I haven't put them up in my store, but message me if you're wanting to get them right away, and I'll, you know, make sure you can get them. I'll get them put up in my store. I might put them up in like a 3 or 4 pack or something. I had them individually, but... Alright, so that looks good to me. I am going to add a little bit more water and varnish because it's a bit thick. And so far the bottles that I have are better than the Tim Holtz bottles because they don't... I have not had them clog yet. You know, so whether they will... With the mica powder, I don't know. That I don't know because I put a lot in there. So, but with just the all the other stuff I did with the sprays I was making, you know, there's only one that sprays a little bit funny, but that's because I left that one too thick, and that's one of my oranges. I think this one a little bit too thick. And as soon as I use it up a little bit, I'm going to add some water to it. It's spraying. It's just not spraying great. But typically, I mean, considering, I mean, I have a lot of powders and pigments and stuff in these, you would think that they would clog up, but they don't. As long as you keep the cap on them, you know, I say that to people, when you're done using your things, take a baby wipe and wipe your little nozzle and return the cap. And it won't dry up because you're sealing it so that it won't dry up. But if you don't do that, you are going to run the risk of them clogging. And then you're going to have to soak the cap in hot water and all that stuff. Mine don't clog because I keep the caps on. You know, like this little, you see those little beads of stuff? That's all wet. And that's fine because it's staying airtight underneath of that cap. So it's not going to clog it. But you should wipe off the nib. This is just from me shaking it. Sometimes it leaks out the top a little. Alright, so now I need a bottle. Did I already get another bottle? I didn't? I did? No, that's right. I had the other bottle for the second batch of that color, purple stuff. Alright. And the straws on it is a bit too long, and it just sits all the way on the bottom. I cut off a good, like, let's see, how much am I cutting off? Almost an inch, like 3/4 of an inch I cut off. And that'll make it sit right at the bottom, like so, without any issues. So let me clean my funnel. I just need to run it through this water here. Take a little paintbrush to make sure there's nothing still sitting in it. I don't care if there's a little bit in it. It's not going to hurt anything. If you don't have a funnel, just pour it over top of your like sink or garbage can when you do it. That's what I didn't have my funnel out for all of the ones I made last night. I didn't have a single funnel. I didn't find my funnel until I finished cleaning off my desk. And then I was like, oh, I could have used that last night. But I didn't spill anything because I did it over my garbage can. I'll probably have a little left over, which is fine. Yep, I usually do have some left over. Just spray this. Actually, if I do it into the garbage can, which is what I usually do. Okay, I need my balls. I need my balls. That's what he said. Alright. So we got 2 new sprays. This one's a copper. I'm going to move that over there for now because now we can test our 2 new sprays out and see how they are. Move my paint out of the way. Move my varnish out of the way. So I have room. Already got a mess going on. Let's see, I need a piece of just a tag would be fine. Now typically when I was spraying these, I was spraying them over my garbage can just because it was just easier. I would just, because with these you're going to spray them like a little bit, you know, more saturated. You're not going to spray them onto your mat and do that. You can, but that's not what you need to do with these. So let's see what we get. Ooh, that's nice and dark. So I'm just going to spray like some there, and I'm going to take this copper, and why not copper and purple? It's thick. That's why it sprays like that, because it's thicky thick. And what you want to do is you want it to be saturated. You want to move it around. You want it to be, you know, crazy. That's why I did it over the garbage can, because I was able to kind of knock some of that off a little bit. Because then what you're going to do, even though it's curling up, the trick to it is you want to dry it until it's just starting to get dry and then spray it with your water. And that gives it that really cool effect. So let me see if I can show you as much as I can. You want to dry it just until it just, like, you see spots starting to get dry. And you're going to have to play to, like, get used to this part. But I'll show you how cool it looks when it's done. Like, I just took it and sprayed a bunch of stuff on there. And I'm still drying it a little bit. And then I'm going to take a towel, or in this case, I'll just grab these little paper towels I cut. And I'm going to put it down. And I might have waited a little too long, but yeah, I probably did a little bit. But because yeah, I waited a little too long on this one. The shimmer is throwing me off because I thought it was wetter than it was. It dries pretty fast, so that's okay. it still looks cool. And what it'll do is give us a base. It worked a little bit. You could see the spots on it, right? It worked more in the purple because I think I let the metallic dry a little too much because the shine was throwing me off. But we'll go back to that one in a minute. Because you want to let it dry completely in between adding your layers. And unlike oxides, which my hands are already gross. Unlike the oxide sprays, you want to let it dry absolutely completely, whether you do it with the heat gun or let it sit aside and dry, but it's got to dry. You know, if you do it with a heat gun, it only takes like, 30 seconds, a minute, but you definitely want that to dry 100%. I think I like using my towel better than these paper towels, but I'll show you with my thing, and since I'm not using the garbage can, and I definitely want like fabric down because I don't want it to leave puddles that I'm then laying it in, you know what I mean? That's why I said do it over garbage can. I'll show you what I was doing, how to use it a little easier, because the metallics, that metallic one was throwing me off a little bit. So you want to get a couple of colors ready. So like, let's say 3 colors. Let's start with the lightest colors. We'll do yellow, we'll do lime green, and this like color here, this like turquoisey kind of greenish bluish color. Get the caps all ready. And make sure this is a little cleaned off. Take your caps off, and I'm just wiping it off because it was nasty and I don't want to get my hands dirty just by spraying it. So you start off and you're going to saturate your page. You're going to take some color and you mix it. The cool thing is if you mix the colors, but you want to make sure it's saturated, like it's going to be, like that, so that all your colors can show, and you're going to let it drip off because you want some of it to drip off, try to make it so that it blends a little bit, but you still see all the colors. It's kind of like one of those things. It's like you got to get used to this because it's not like the oxides in that way, where the oxides you would just, dip it or, spray a little bit and add water and stuff like that. We're not going to add the water yet, but we want to take off some of the excess. That's why I was shaking it and letting it go. And that looks really cool the way that is. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention, which I better wait and mention this after. So I'm going to start drying this, and once it starts to dry, that's when I'm going to add my water. So I'm watching it from several angles, and as it starts to dry in spots where it's not moving anymore, I'm going to hit it with a little water. And then I'm going to dry it again. I'm going to dry it a little more. Not all the way. And then I'm going to go in with a towel and I'm going to press. That's how you get it to react like the oxides. You just got to do it while the ink is wet. Unlike the oxides where you could do it whether it's wet or dry. But there you go. There you start your splotches. Look at that. You see what I mean? You got your splotches. Now you just got to make sure it's completely dry, which obviously this feels cold to the touch, which means it's still wet. You can tell it's wet. It needs to dry. So I'm going to dry it a little bit. Make sure it's completely dry. And it won't even really, even with it wet like this, where it's not like dripping wet or anything, it won't really react, much at all. Even like this, like you're not going to get much, like I just sprayed that on there. It's not really going to do much. You might get a tiny bit up, but not very much at all. But, you do want to make sure before you go throwing more ink on there or spray that you have it completely dry. And it's best to dry it, if you're going to dry it flat, make sure you have a towel behind it. So that any condensation will soak into the towel and not the tag and keep it wet. Or hold it up like this at an angle or something so that it actually, I like to hold it up so that, it dries quicker that way. And dry the back of it a little bit so you can like flip it over, dry it from the back. And you're going to have to deal with the fact that it curls up and stuff, but usually after the first time, it doesn't curl up as much. But another reason, too, to dry it is because since we're saturating it with so much color, you want to dry it. You know, this way it'll give the integrity back to it. It's not going to start to rip or pill on you because you are soaking it. Unlike the oxides, you don't soak with the oxides. This you do. Grab a drink. Okay, so now we can pick whatever color you want. Let's do pink and purple. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's grab some orange. The 2 oranges and the red. And you can use any combination of colors. I advise you to use at least 2 colors. But if you want to do 3, you know, it's fine. And you can leave the caps off while you're playing around with them. But as soon as you're done, make sure you wipe them. Like, as soon as you're done for the day or the session, wipe it. Throw that cap back on there so that it doesn't dry up. Alright, so we can go back and cover the whole thing again. This is the one that gives me a little bit of a problem because this is the one that, that's okay. I mean, it still sprays. It's just you can tell it's thick. Oh, I forgot to mention. I put a couple of drops of silicone in each one of these bottles. There's colors I didn't put silicone in, and I can't remember which ones. So sometimes you're going to see what looks like sort of a cell pop up. That's because of the silicone. So these are fully saturated again, and it'll look like little cells. I just did it for poops and gigs on a few of them because I wanted to see what would happen. Not very much happens, so it's really not necessary. You'll see these little dots pop up, but we're going to do that anyway, so you don't really need to add the silicone. It really isn't necessary because we're kind of doing that anyway. But you can, if you just want to leave it and let it, like, do that. Uh-oh. Oh, that's my alarm. I thought it was the phone ringing. You can add it if you want to. I just added a couple drops to like 3 or 4 of them, and I don't remember really which one. I know it was like one of the oranges or something. All right. Now it's wet. I got off most of the excess drippy stuff, and now I'm going to start to dry it. Dry it, spray it, dab it. As soon as I see it starting to get, you know, kind of like lose its movement. And some spots are going to dry faster than others. So try not to, you know, stick in one spot too much. And it looks like I spray a lot because I kind of do. I spray a little more than normal. I don't like soak it, but I spray it like a lot more splotches. And now we're going to dab it with the towel. And voila. I mean, come on. That is the coolest thing ever. I mean, look at that. And like some spots are like, you'll get more off, and you could sometimes rub it a little bit and it'll help it come off in some areas. Just play with it. But look at that. I mean, that could not be more cool. And you don't have mud. It did not disturb the background. You know, you'll have areas where it's a little darker in areas, but I mean, look how cool that looks. It's just so badass. And then we need to, and about the silicone, that was an afterthought. Like, I had already played a lot. You don't need it. Like I said, I just thought to myself, I wonder what that would do, because I had it and I had cleaned off my desk, and you know how like paint pouring, you use that. And I thought because we're using kind of an acrylic based sort of thing, I just thought maybe it would do something, and it doesn't really do anything. So it's kind of pointless, but it's in a few of the sprays. So if you see little bubbles pop up, it's just that, but it's not going to do the same thing as it would as if you did like a paint pour. I was just, like I said, I like to experiment and mess around and throw things in things and just see what happens. So that's the only point behind that. Alright, so she's dry now. I think she's dry. Cool it off a little bit. I like to cool it off so then I can't tell if it's dry until I cool it off. But see, what's cool is there's like a little wetness right there. Okay. But what's cool is now, even though I have like dark red on there and stuff, I can add more over top of it. Just like with the oxides. And I even have a white, which I'll show you too, because that's kind of a cool. I like the white too. The white's a lot of fun to play with. That's why I did the white. So now we can go in and do like, let's see, we got pink and a little purple and maybe a little blue, since we did all of these colors already. But we didn't do like the teal. We didn't do the dark teal. We just did this and the orange and the yellow and the, what colors did we do? Oh, did we do the dark teal? I don't remember. I don't know, but I know we didn't do the blue or the purple, this purple. I usually try to save my really dark colors like this one and typically the red for a little bit later, even though you can layer over top of all of them just fine. Just want to make sure they're shaped each time, because every time you put them down, it doesn't take long for them to separate. As you can see, I used this one before, but look, you could, I don't know if you could tell because it's not showing unless it's standing up, but it'll start to immediately separate. So what I'm going to do here is, now here's where you can stop at any time putting it all over the whole card. And start doing like little pieces. And I'll show you that in a minute. And then you can pop a little bit of white in there, even though it's probably going to get mixed in a bit, but who cares? And of course, like I said, you want to let it drip off, because otherwise it'll take forever to start to dry, and it'll dry in different places, you know, at different times. So I'm kind of letting it flow. And then, but I can't play with it for too long. I can't sit here and just keep moving it around, because then it's going to start drying and I haven't gotten my water on there yet. And you need to do the, you know, water to get it to activate, you know, the underneath so that you can still see it. All right, so it's going to dry over here quicker. So I'm going to concentrate over here. Like, you got to kind of play that game. See the cells popping up, but they're not really going to, there must have been silicone in one of those sprays. And I could leave it like that if I really wanted to, but it doesn't give me enough, in my opinion. All right, some spray down, some water. I mean, if it did the job for me without the water, then that would be one thing, but it doesn't really. And then you want to take your towel, and you want to lift your color. And then you just put it over the whole thing. It will not pick all of it up. It'll only pick up. That's what's nice about it, is it does that random. See, it decided to leave a lot of this alone and concentrate up here. But see what it did with the purple? It kind of put that purple right over top of that red. And look how cool that looks. Even with this down here, still it didn't pick up a lot here. I must have like, maybe, I don't know, it's just random, which is cool. It's kind of like you could be random. If you're somebody who has a hard time being random, this will help you be random. So let's make sure it's dry. But it's like no matter what you do, every time you pick up that towel, you're going to go, oh, that looks so cool. I did not pick up the towel one time and go, oh, I don't like that, ever. Every time I would pick up the towel after blotting it, I'd be like, oh man, that's so cool. And it just comes out really cool looking every time. Now, obviously, if you let it dry too long, it's not going to pick up at all. So it's a practice game. You're going to have to practice, because I guarantee you the first couple of times you do it, you're not going to, you know, you're not going to do it right or something, and you're going to end up leaving too much, you know, leaving it for too long and not putting enough, you know, whatever. It happens. So just practice, and you'll understand when to put the water on. Like, it'll make sense to you. Just do it a couple times. and it'll work. You just need to do it a couple times. I always cool it off. So I did like 3 layers where I covered the whole thing. So now that I have a really dark colors building up here, now I'm going to concentrate my colors a little bit. I'm not going to spray them everywhere. I mean, you can and see, you know, keep doing that if you want to. But I think that when you concentrate it, you get some really cool results, you know. A little bit different than the other. Okay, and because this purple is over top of that red, it did darken it and made it quite dark. It's still not this dark, but it darkened it. So now I might take a little bit of purple. Now here's where you can like just do one color or like one color with white, I like to do. So what I'll do is, oh, I already took the cap off. I'll like, let's say, do like a little spot like that. And I'll go in with a little, and again, you want to make sure it's quite saturated. You never want to just put a little bit, right? So do that, start spraying it, or heating it, I should say. Move it around a little bit. And you'll notice, especially when I do it with the white a little bit, you start to see, do you see the white kind of pooling at the top? That's the pigment. That's the oxide. That's that oxide kind of stuff going on. It's coming up towards the top, which is making it so that whatever's under, it's like washing away some of it, which is what's going to give you those spots. And then when you heat it, it just kind of helps it. And you might only get like a small amount of it, but I mean, it's purple and white. On camera, it looks a little bit lighter, but it's actually, you know, a nice purple and white, and it looks really cool. Now I could do that same thing up here to kind of lighten a little bit of this up. This is where you start to play. This is where I was playing. Like, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do the same thing. And I'm going to do it here. I'll leave that even. I'll mix a little bit into it. And it gets a little more easier to control this way too. Tap it off some, start drying it some. You always want to dry like the biggest puddles first. And as soon as it starts to get to the point where it's like not moving, it doesn't matter how much you spray. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to try to like spray just a little bit. You could just give it like a half spray, and if it sprays a lot, who cares? It'll still give you a really cool effect. And I just dry it a little bit, and then I go in and I dab. Now the white stayed pretty strong on that side. But I mean, now I've got this cool kind of purple and white thing going on here, and it almost looks like it's a different color over here than there, just because of that, you know. But it'll do different things, and it never ever looks bad. It always looks kind of cool. But you just got to get used to what you don't want happening is you don't want a whole bunch. You want the color to either be even across the whole thing or even in one little spot, but you don't want it dripping down and all that, because what's going to happen is when you have like a spot up here and then a bunch of drips going down, those drips are going to wind up drying at different times, and it's almost like, and you're just going to have drips. Try to either concentrate it onto a puddled area or the whole thing. Try not to let it drip with just like 2 or 3 drips that go down it, unless that's the look you're looking for, but it's going to end up leaving a drip, kind of, if that makes sense. Because when you go to spray it, you might not spray it in time, and then you're going to end up with these weird drips, and it might not look as good. So like, let's take some, let's just do this corner and that corner, and I'll again take a little bit of white Just a little, I always like to throw a little white in there. Let's mix it up around a little bit. Let's get that off of there. Too much. It never looks ugly. You know what I mean? It always looks just really cool. Focus. This thing won't focus. Come on, dude. I give up with the focusing. But, you know, and you can always go back in and adjust areas, which is cool. Like, you can't do that as much with oxides because they, you know, like well, I mean, yeah, you really can't. You can't adjust it the way you can with this. This you can adjust, kind of. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you can. So, you know what? I'm going to take some more of this green and I'm going to go up here. And I'm just going to go right here. I'm not even going to put any white in it. Just going to go in with some green. As soon as it stops moving, put a little water on it, let it sit for a second, and it'll give me like green just in the background of those dots. Like, watch. It'll almost look like you didn't even put it on top. You kind of put it in the background, sort of. You see how it's like in the background areas? Because my green is the one that I needed more white pigment for that I didn't have. So this one's not as dark. So this one has a tendency to, it's not as doesn't have as much pigment in it. So it tends to like sit in the background a little more. Let's see, what other color? We got, where's that other one at? This one here. Do like a little bit of that. I'll stick a little white on there too. You just gotta keep an eye on it. Just shoot it with some spray. And you'll just get these cool little, you see that? That's like cool little, and the rest of it you can see is wet, but it ain't doing nothing to it. So that's the cool thing about it. Like oxides, if you try to do something like that and spray water on it, it's going to affect every other part of that tag. Because there's no way to spray water on it. You'd have to cup your hand, make sure no other water got anywhere else. Whereas this, you can work in little areas because you're not going to screw up the rest of the tag. You know what I mean? As long as the only place you are working on is where you put the wet paint, you know, you're not going to, there's no way to really screw it up. Which is, you know, the cool part. Let's see. We'll put some. Let's take some of it. No, I'll take some of this red. Put some red over there. Put a little white on it. Take off any drips. And you might only get just a little bit sometimes. Sometimes you just get a little bit. But hey, it's cool looking. And then you wipe off the excess water everywhere else because that doesn't matter. And this is where like I go in and I just keep layering and layering and layering. And none of it's mud. It's all like awesome color. You know what I mean? But it's just, you know, just got all kinds of colors going on. But then you could do something really cool. I'll show you. Like if you don't feel like playing anymore and you're just like, okay, you know, and it's looking, you know, way too much, you know, for you. Now, if it's lighter colors, you can use black. I mean, even the darker colors, you can use black, but I think it'll look better if I used white and I did a whole layer of white over the whole thing. I'll show you. So, and I'll do one with black and show you that too. We're almost 2 hours in already. Goodness, because it's fun just to play with these. It's so fun. Oh, my white's spraying a little wonky. So you want to get a... Stop spraying like stupid. It's spraying really dumb. But anyway, I'm going to move it all over the tag. And wherever it's not covering, I'm going to use my finger to make sure it covers the whole thing. And then I'll start letting it drip. Yeah, my white might be a little thick and need a little watering down. All right. These dry fairly quickly, but not as quick as the oxides do. But, you know, once you start tapping off that liquid, it's going to start drying. So you want to keep an eye on it. So we're going to do the same thing. See how like I kept spraying water and spraying water? It don't matter. Spray as much as you want, really. I mean, I'm trying to get dots so that when I lift it, you know. But look at that. Is that not freaking cool? I mean, come on. That's so cool looking. You can get some really cool looks to this. If you want more white, you can go back in and, you know, dry it first. And then go back in and concentrate where you want it. But I love how it went all the way around the edge, kind of. It almost looks like you're looking through a snow cave. Isn't that cool? And if you like, you can rub it. And sometimes that'll take off a little more of it before you dry it all the way. And then you could just leave it like that if you want. You know? How cool is that? All those colors are back there. Yeah, some of the white splattered on the inside, obviously, but that's really cool looking. It looks better in person than on camera even. But now, if we take a tag and if we want to make a galaxy, a quick galaxy, real easy to do, you want to get your galaxy colors, which would be your pink and purple and teal, lime green, you know, whatever. Just don't spray your lime green right next to your purple or next to your pink. Do that down, you know, this side and towards there. You know what I mean? Because obviously, or use blue. It'll be better because blue will mix better. Well, this would mix with the purple okay, actually. So, but I'll use this color. So what you're going to do with this is obviously you're just going to spray the bejesus out of it with 3 or 4 colors. You definitely want a mirage of colors. So, oh, I just don't want the green next to the purple. That's what I meant. Oh, well, we're going to do it this way. And then I'll add this in the middle here and hope for the best. Because I forgot the green was the color I was worried about. I kept thinking it was the teal. Oopsie. Oopsie doopsie. Oh Oh well, it'll be fine. It's really wet, so it'll be all right. It'll be okay. That looks really cool right now. Holy moly, that looks cool. I'm just going to add a little bit more pink in there because I want to make sure it's solidly covered. I want to make sure there's no massive puddling on the corners or edges or anything because I don't want it to... Now, with this, we're going to let it dry all the way. Well, you know what? We can do a little dab. Well, we can do a little dabbing. Actually, we can do a little of this. Take a little white and then dab it. And get like a little... But you want to keep the back... So you're not going to do it like you normally do with the water. You're going to let it kind of be, you know, like kind of be just as it is, sort of. I put a little white on there and dab that up a little bit, but I'm pretty much going to let it be. Because obviously if it's a galaxy, we want the color in the back, you know, because we need something for the black to pick up and have left behind. And that's what we're going to do next after this is dry. But look at that damn coloring on there. That right there just by itself looks freaking cool. And you can't even see the green. It looks so blue. It doesn't look as vibrant on camera as it does in person. The only other thing I might do is add a little bit of this really dark purple. I'd just like to add a little of that. And maybe add in a little bit of that to it too. That I will dab up because there's color behind it, so just to get a little bit of it in there. So even that just looks so cool. It's so cool. All right, let me make sure it's dry. See what happens to your hands playing with these. I just like to get it, because if I spray the black on top of this hot thing, it's going to start drying even quicker. So I don't want it to dry as fast if I can help it. Alright, so we're nice and dry. I'm just going to straighten it out a little bit. So now's where the magic happens, and we're going to make it look like a galaxy, kind of like that other one that I have, wherever the hell it went. That one looks pretty badass now that it's dry. Look at that. That looks pretty cool, don't it? With that copper color. Pretty cool. I realized I didn't put any of the ink in that copper color one. I should probably put a little bit in there. But this is, you know, what we're looking to get. A little more color, because I think at the time that I did this, I didn't quite have all the colors. I think I had yellow and pink and teal and green, and that's it. And I think that's all I used. Because I don't even think I had the purple, because I think the teal and the pink kind of merged together. So we're going to get our little black, which was easy to make. Again, I just used the same stuff. I had black pigment powder, black printer ink, and I got a nice black, like black. Saturate the whole thing. Nice and wet. And we're just gonna move it around. We don't want to like shake it all down to one end because it'll dry too fast on the other end. So try, if you have a lot on there, you can try to go back and forth a little bit so that it kind of stays a little bit even. All right, this is where we'll do it with the water now. See, it's already starting to dry right there, so I'm going to concentrate over here. You can see the little spots from the stuff. That dried pretty fast. And I'm just spraying the crap out of it because it's going to do what it's going to do, and that's it. Ain't nothing I could do about it once it's done. And if you need to add more black, if you take up too much, like I kind of did a little bit here, but it still looks badass. I could still add a little black in, and I probably will. I'll dry it a little bit and go back in with some more black. Because I probably put a little too much water, maybe pulled a little too much up. But, you know, whatevs. That's, you can add more. It's not going to affect anything as long as you dry it. But it does look cool the way it is. I might go in and vibrant up that pink a little bit more too. I might go throw a little bit more pink on that one corner over here just because it's a little faded out. And I'm not even gonna pull it up. I'm just gonna dry it like that because obviously I'm gonna go back over it with the black. And so I wanna leave that color back there. Almost looked leopard print before I did that. Okay, and now we can do the black again. I can even go in with a little of that purple and like add to it since it's such a dark color. That would even give it a cool look. That purple. Alright, that's all I need to do. My hands are so covered in paint. This time I'll wait a little bit longer before I put the water on. I think I put too much on prematurely. That's better. You want some dark spots in there, of course. Cool, look at that. Look at that. Holy moly, that's cool. And again, you can take it if you're like, oh, well, you know, if you're quick enough, you can go in a little bit and rub it too, which will even take off a little more. But unfortunately, once it's, you know, on there, you can't take off anymore. But that's, I mean, look at that. It's perfect. And it's so cool looking. It's perfect. I'm glad I darkened that pink up because that's really showing now. cool thing is now I can splatter on my white stars, and they're gonna stay nice and bright. Unlike if I do it on this Oxide one, it'll likely pick up the color in the background. It may not as much because it's been dry for a long time, but I'll splatter both of them with the same white paint. I'm just gonna take this and see, and plus I made this into a very fairly opaque white, but still, it typically would, this one's getting crusty. Don't get crusty on me. Sometimes you need to take the nozzle off and just wipe it. It starts to look like it's getting crusty at all. This is the one I wanted to put a little more varnish in or something, because it was getting, and I put white paint in with this one, so I had white paint and some white paint and white pigment powder. I should shake it with a damn cap on. A little spot because I'm gonna just spray some here. And it's quite thick, so it may not pick up the color. I should have watered it down a little bit more. Oh, it is picking up the color, definitely. Yeah, it turned from being white and it's getting more purple as it goes. Not going to show it on camera as much, I'm sure. It may not focus it enough to do it, but come on. But yeah, you can see how vibrant. You can't even see the white spots from there on the purple one. You can see them a little bit, but a lot of them have sunk into the background, and that's the big problem with oxides. Is if you try to do you could do like a galaxy, but you see they're like turning purple. In person you could see it a lot more, but you know, I can go back in with a little water on my brush and try to even get more, and it still won't, you know, but on here it'll just, what the hell just fell off of there? I don't know what that was. A piece of my brush? I don't know. Like, it'll look really white for a while, but then it's going to sink into the background real fast. It is. It's like sinking in faster than I can even get it down. Whereas this is staying nice and white, sitting on top like that. I'm covered in white splatters. Yeah, like it's turning purple as I do it. You could see like every other dot is like purple. Why will this just refuse to focus? It's like the worst camera on the planet for focusing. There you go. See it? You could see the purple in the white right there. You see what it's doing? That's what the problem is. Whereas this, it's staying nice and white. You don't see any color coming up into the... Come on. Into the spots, if I can get it to focus. Nope. See, they're just white. And so that's how you get your galaxy. Hello? There we go. You get your cool galaxy with billions of stars with this giant mess I've got going on. So anyway, I hope you liked this video. I know it was long and I apologize for the length, but I know that some of you, the diehards, mixed media people like me, who like, you know, funky new things and to see new things, will really enjoy this video, I think, because just to be able to see what you can do with these sprays, that's why I think everybody should make some, because they're fun. I mean, if you're going to buy your oxides, you know, whether you're going to buy them or, you know, make them, make these too if you're going to make them. And even if you're buying your oxides, the next time you get a chance, get the stuff to make these. You know what I mean? Because these, they don't sell these, I don't think. I've never seen anything like this at all. So who knows though? You know, there's somewhere out there, there may be a spray that's kind of similar, but I've never seen it. I've never seen anybody, you know, demo a spray that does stuff like that. I could be wrong. I mean, I know like Diane Reevely, or is it Diane Reevely? Who has like, she has her sprays that are permanent and you know, whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, I've never been able to do anything like that with the couple of them that I had, because they were very thin, and they were more of an ink. They don't have pigment in them, so they don't do the same thing. You know, it's that whole dye pigment thing that got, you know, that I think makes it work the best. Now that bottle's, because it's like permanent, so it's going to stay on there. Yeah, you can't even see really white spots anymore. A few, but they're mostly all purple spots. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you'll give it a thumbs up. I hope you will try making these sprays. I would love to see if you do and see what you do with them. And always feel free to ask me any questions. You know what I mean? Like if you're having any issues or whatever. I will be playing with these again this week in one of my live streams, whether it's the one, you know, I don't know when, but sometime this week, I'm sure I'll be back on playing with them and showing some more tricks and things that I figured out, because there's other things I want to show, but this video is getting tremendously long at 2 hours and 2 minutes. Is ridiculous. I'm sure you guys are tired of it by now, but I hope you enjoyed it at least a little bit, and give it a try if you can, and let me know how it turns out, and send me some pictures of playing, you know, of what you've made with your new, we'll call them poodle sprays. I don't know what the hell to call them, but yeah. Anyway, if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Also, I'm having an auction on Sunday, so come check that out. I'll have some craft goodies and all kinds of stuff up for auction that you can bid on. And also there will be links in the description, like I said, to my DIY Oxide video, plus where you can get the printer inks and other things. Also, I have a Patreon. I do a lot of experimenting on my Patreon during the Friday night live streams. Well, it's either Friday or Saturday. It's once a week, but during those live streams, I do a lot of like this type of stuff where I'll experiment with things and do stuff. So if you like watching that, where I'm messing around, playing with different things. Whoops, that was loud. That's my Patreon. For that is only $1 a month. It's just $1. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less, just $1. So if you wanted to sign up just for the extra live stream, you can do that. Or you can sign up different tiers. I have classes and all kinds of things. So check out my link for my Patreon, which is down below as well. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And thank you everybody who gave me birthday wishes. My birthday was yesterday, or well, Monday. I don't know by the time I get the video out what day it'll be. Hopefully still Tuesday, I think. But yeah, because, well, no, then it was Sunday was my birthday. Sorry, I'm all kinds of confused. So thank you for those who gave me birthday wishes and whatnot. I really appreciate it. That was very sweet of you. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your night, and make sure you do what you love and love what you do, and be nice to people. See you later, alligator. Bye.